Okay, good morning, guys. It's Saturday morning. Hope everyone's had a great week. Uh, let's see. We'll start off here if we have any questions. Anybody have any questions about anything? I think last week we've been sort of buzzing about current events, what's going on, and just kind of looking at the election, looking at some things that are happening around that, and looking at where we are, the role we play, and all of that stuff. So, anything that catch your attention or any questions that you may have.
I want to talk about something today, Ron,
Okay.
that
Yes,
caught
sir.
my attention during the week. Let's see if there are questions first, okay?
Okay.
I have a question. I'm not sure. Good morning, everybody. This is Audrey.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I don't want it to take us in a different direction, but it might be relevant. Anyway, I was just thinking about Christianity and then Judaism, but where does Islam in the name of Allah fit into all of this new revelations that we've had?
If you will, grant me privilege, I'll talk about that in depth tomorrow.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, because I have someone else asked me something about that last night, as a matter of fact. But yeah, I would like to look at some stuff that I've been looking at earlier and bring it to tomorrow. Thank you, Audrey. All right.
Anyone else? Any other questions, comments, anyone? Okay, Pastor, I guess no one has anything.
I want to talk about something that we've spoken of before, but I don't think that we have really looked at it in depth. I believe it's something that we have mentioned only. I want to talk about the social construct of racism. Why do I want to talk about that? As much as I've heard references based on race, as much as I have been hurt by things as when I was younger, based on race, I never really thought about it, even though I know that it's a social construct. If that is the case, then why is it we have not deconstructed it? I do believe that anything that men constructed, we can deconstruct. Because race is not a spiritual thing at all. For example, Alexander the Great did not, or Alexander the Thief, I should say, or the Greek did not invade Kemet based on race. He did it based on greed. There was a period in the earth when people were not actually treated different ways because of race. During the ancient period, for example, in Greece, the Greeks believed that anyone other than them were barbarians, period. They didn't care who you were. They saw people who lived in the interior of Europe as being weak people because the skin was so light. And the Greeks had this olive complexion and even darker because they often, they spent a lot of time nude in the sun. So they were tan deeply. So when we look at it from this perspective, the question becomes, where did all this come from? When we talk about Ethiopia, uh, Ethiopia came from the Greeks, and it meant burnt face. Simply saying that people were darker than them. And of course, they thought they were barbarians as they did everybody else other than themselves. But it was not based on skin color, it was based on how they lived, because they lived differently than the Greeks. They even called Celtics. Celt come from a word that means barbarian, which the Greeks seem to label everybody as barbarian using different names. As far as slavery is concerned, slavery has been in the earth forever. And, and there were so many Slavic people enslaved until the end of the word slave comes from Slav, because there were so many Slavic people enslaved. But no one was more brutal in slavery than America and Britain. So let's get that straight up front. So where am I going with this? Race is an anthropological myth. It's nonsense. And now the idea of race is real, because we experience it all the time. But the reality of race, in terms of being predicated on something spiritual, is not real. Race became a major factor in enslavement in the 1400s with the Portuguese enslavers. And the reason that race became a major factor in slavery is because there was a characterization of people on levels of intellect, supposedly. But really, race came into play as a justification for treating people like they were animals. And it began to intensify with the slave trade itself. The intensification of slavery, of race rather, came through the mindset of Europeans. Today, we see the same thing. We see this the social construct of race. The best part about it now is that race is being deconstructed by virtue of European males losing their stronghold over societies. America was established as a white man's nation, period. It had nothing to do with an idea of becoming a melting pot. It was a place for white men to get rich based on slavery. And those in the North who we often read about, who breath smelled like pet milk, according to them, they were the ones who were the financiers. And they profited from slavery, and they too were racist. And you've heard me say before that the abolitionist is just as racist as the Southerner. He just hid it better, because the abolitionists did not feel that people of darker skin was equal to them. They saw us as being inferior. So right now, when we listen to how white men in particular are talking about Kamala Harris, what we are beginning to see is a melting of this attitude toward about race and racism. When I talk about a European, I see a white person, more specifically a white man. When I talk about an African, I see a dark person. When I talk about a European mindset, I see energy. When I talk about a Kabbalah, I see energy. And the question becomes, why is it that such energy is projected when we talk about Europeans or European mindset and Kabbalah? Why is this energy projected? Because these two people are antithetical, meaning that the European person, the European male in particular, the European masculinity sees itself as being superior to the African. And you say, but there are other dark people, but the brutality and the dehumanization is directed primarily towards the African. When you see something that you can't be but you want to, then you begin to project yourself, your thoughts about yourself onto them. And I do believe that that's where this whole concept of racism is seated. It's seated in a place not in the soul, but in the mindset of men, and again, more particularly European men, and it's seated there out of jealousy and out of fear. Out of jealousy because you see a group of people who are capable of things that you are not capable of. You see a group of people who have been historically inventors and creators of societies that have flourished and have flourished without having to viciously conquer any other group of people. The fear
Why
is.
do you
Go ahead, Ron.
Why do you believe that mindset though does not involve the soul? You don't think that those two things can be, huh? Okay,
I
go ahead.
tell you what, your mind is the guiding force in this material world based upon things you see with your eyes. Your soul is predicated on what you see with your eye. And we have for so long lived by our minds as opposed to out of our souls. And our minds would tell us to do anything. Our minds, as we often say, play tricks on us. It makes that one thing seem to be something totally different than what it is. If we follow the dictates of our mind, we are pulled in all directions. If we follow the dictates of our soul, then we are focused in one direction, and that direction is developing a sense of spirituality within, but the express purpose of bringing spirituality to the face of all men, of mankind, period. So when I say mindset, as opposed to the soul, I'm talking about the things that made this world the way it is. It was not the soul of a European who made the world the way it is. It's the mind of the European that did that. And seeks to maintain that. Does that help, Ron?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
How can you see that? That's the question, I suppose. Any other questions?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Let me think about it for a minute, but okay.
One of the most difficult things is to see the difference between your mind and your soul. And the reason it's so difficult is because we have talked about a soul as though it was only active when we die, in hell or in heaven. Your soul is active now. Your soul is to your spiritual essence as what your mind is to your body, to your physical essence. Now, I said before that we are the tree of life. We are the tree of, of the knowledge of good and evil, and we are the tree of life. Tree of life, soul, tree of the knowledge of good and evil, mind, because the mind processes both. This idea of race comes from the mind without any activity from the soul. And one of the reasons we're able to see that, if we think about it, is because if we look at how race came into existence and how it has been labeled in relationship to different people, more specifically those of African descent, what we see is we are said to be ignorant. We are said to be nasty. We are called animals. We are called barbarians. We have contributed nothing to the world. We are a drag on humanity. We've never had a successful kingdom or society at all. All of these things are fed into the ecosystem, social ecosystem, based upon the color of someone's skin. However, when you look at it realistically, all of these things are false. And that is one of the reasons I talk about it being a social construct as well as an anthropological myth or anthropological nonsense. Because history tells us something totally different than that. Right now, let me back up. The reason that Christianity, Islam, and Judaism are so dangerous, especially Christianity, is because all of those are based on race. And all of those are based on the color of someone's skin. What's the difference? The difference is this. There is absolutely zero religion on the face of this earth that is spiritual. They are cultural beliefs. They are political beliefs. They are beliefs that men have nurtured throughout the centuries. A 500-year slave trade has nurtured where we are now in terms of this misconception of humanity called race. And I do believe that that is necessary for us to talk about so we can put the real thing about race, put it to bed forever or bury it forever so it never rises again. And the only way we can do that is by putting it in the macro. I do believe that. Back to where we are now with race.
I
If we were,
morning.
go ahead, Barbara.
What you talked about, jealousy, fear, and and greed underpins this whole idea of racism. Jealousy because of perception that someone has something that you don't have and you want it. Fear, someone's going to take your power away that you don't have, but you think you have. And greed, someone has something that you think you want that you don't have. All of it goes back to the same thing, that perception of lack within the entity, the person, the individual. And regardless of what that perception of lack is, it can be projected very strongly as racism. But then you talked about some of the things that Africans are said to be: ignorant, nasty, dumb. And so these are all of the things that are being brought up in people's faces on a side by side with Kamala Harris. You say she's dumb? Well, look at what she's accomplished. Look at you. You say she's ignorant? Look at what she has accomplished. Look at you. You say she's nasty? Look at what you've done versus what, you know. So it's a mirror. And that's why lots of people really, really are upset about this, because it's simply that mirror reflecting all of the stuff that you're talking about that's around on a day-to-day basis that people don't think to talk about anymore because they've repressed it, that part of it. But what has not been repressed is their reaction to that part of it, if that resonates.
It does. If you look at it, what got my attention was when Trump said what he did in regards to Kamala, and all she said was same old show. And that was her response to that, as opposed to getting in the weeds with him being a racist. I do believe that was the best response because of what racism is. If racism is a social construct, why would you spend your time defending who you are when you know who you are, as opposed to dealing with what humanity is in need of? I do believe also that the proponents of racism has to be taken, the curators of racism has to be taken off the stage, the international stage. And the curators of racism is Biden and Trump. They are not, I'm not talking about them as persons, I'm talking about them as a duality in the European mindset. Why is it these two and why is it not whatever that dude named in Hungary or Putin in Russia? Why is it not them? It's not them because what they are is projected from this country. Or what white men in this country control the thoughts of white men worldwide. That's the bottom line. So the projection from white men in this country is reflective in what Putin is doing and saying and how he responds to people who look like us. Now keep in mind that the bookends to racism is the European mindset projected toward the African, which is the other end of the book. Everything in between is dealt with differently than these two groups deal with each other. Now, the very thing that gave life to Europeans is being rejected by the European. And when I say that, I'm not talking about individual people. I am talking about the societal norms that function, where racism functions well. And that is worldwide, where in European controlled places. And I'm saying that the reflection of this racism must be dealt with at its source. The depth of racism was said to be in apartheid South Africa. The worst racism is not the mindset of a group of people that like Trump, or the mindset of the institution of apartheid in South Africa. The most dangerous source of racism is a liberal. That's the most dangerous source of racism, abolitionists, because they do not believe that they are racist. They do not believe that anything about them could possibly be racist until you ask them to change places with you. And then you begin to see, well, I really don't want to look like you. Even if I can keep all the stuff I got, I don't want to look like you. So why is it that you are so hell-bent on not looking like me? Because of all those things you have attributed to me. And everything that you have attributed to me, what that I spoke of earlier and Barbara expanded on, all of those things that you have attributed to me is who you are. And because you believe in the depth of your heart that you are better than I am because of what you have created in the mindset of people who look like you. That's why you don't want to look like me. Now, when you look at the different emperors, rulers, whether it be Italy, Greece, England, it doesn't matter. If you look at them, if you look at it historically, what you will find is many of the people who were rulers in those different areas, many of these people, their mindset, their photos, their paintings were much darker. They were African until when you look at how they started painting them lighter and lighter till they got them to look like Caucasians, to white people, because there were Caucasian social construct as well, white people. And now all of a sudden, there are no Africans who ever ruled in any of these nations, which is a lie in actuality. So what I'm saying in essence is that we must take the spiritual road when we talk about race. And the spiritual road about racism is a road, a journey that does not embrace a fight against racism. If we are making an effort to fight racism, we're fighting to win. Because race is not real, but racism we experience. Racism is instituted in policy, and we, in order to deal with racism, the mindset of those who have been trained in the mindset of Europeans must begin to move in a direction that causes them to do what's beneficial to humanity. They are not doing it necessarily out of a spiritual understanding of who they are. They're doing it because there are spiritual people putting spiritual energy into the macro to bring these things about. And the more that this happens, the more we see that those who are searching for something better are looking at something better for everyone, not just themselves as individuals, especially those who are younger, those who look like us and those who don't. And what I'm saying is that right now, as we are positioned in this era, we have a mindset of a spirituality that's not understood by the people or person who's pushing it versus racism in the mindset of the European. And these policies and this racism in the mindset, these are constructs within the confines of this environmental setting called Earth. And as long as we are able to bring these things to the forefront and discuss them without anger and discuss them without apprehension, to discuss them for the express purpose of understanding, bringing understanding rather to the fragility or the non-existence, because it's not fragile, it just doesn't exist, the non-existence of race itself. The world that existed without races being delineated based on skin color and ethnicity, that world was a more peaceful world until Europeans invaded it. And what we are doing now is transitioning from a world that is controlled by white men to a world that is influenced by spirituality for the benefit of all men. Am I making sense so far? So,
Yes.
go ahead.
Hey,
Go ahead.
good morning, everyone. Reb, just two quick questions for you. What's your view on John Brown as an abolitionist with Harper's Ferry and his stance against slavery? And someone please correct me if I'm wrong. John Brown, the Quakers, and Frederick Douglass, all of them kind of interacted with one another. However, Frederick Douglass could not be in meetings with the Quakers. And I kind of associate the Quakers with the abolitionists. That's the first question. What's your view on John Brown as an abolitionist?
John Brown, number one, is not the norm when it comes to abolitionists. John Brown was a revolutionary. They paint him as an abolitionist because he's a white man. John Brown was a revolutionary. He was not just that person who was going to sit back and write stories in a newspaper about how he felt about slavery. He felt like slavery was not going to end unless it was overthrown. Now, as far as the Quakers are racist. Bottom line, all this little bearded folk walking around here with these little wooden wagons, with all this pious talk and looking like the holy man of our Southern Baptist Church, that soft voice, they are racist. They always have been. They never felt like the people. They always felt like we were barbarians who needed to be civilized, just like the rest of the white folk who came out of Europe. That's their mindset. I said it and I said again. There is not one religion on the face of this earth that's spiritual. Not one. Not one. Every religion on the face of this earth came from European mindset for the express purpose of controlling humanity. Islam controls Northern Africa at the behest of white men. Islam controls Northern Africa because of the wealth there. And the people who control Northern Africa are Semites. They are a mixture of Europeans, Asians, and Africans. They are not the Africans who were there in Northern Africa from the beginning. They are invaders just like the Europeans were. I hope that helps you, George.
Oh, okay, that Reb. The next question, Reb, is I think there is one religion. Well, not one religion. I wouldn't even say it's not even a religion. Just what are your view, Reverend Richard, or anyone's view on the 5 percenters? And the 5 percenters, a guy by the name of Clarence X, or Clarence Smith out of Danville, he broke away from Elijah Muhammad slightly before Malcolm did. And his gripe with Elijah Muhammad was, why are you going after people who have been to prison or in prison? Let's get our people together before they go to prison. So just want to know what's your view or anyone's view on the 5 percenters. And you got some people like the Genius. He's a member of the Wu-Tang Clan. He teaches quantum physics up at MIT. But just want to know your view, Reverend Richard, if you have one, or anyone's view on the 5 percenters. Thank you.
The 5 percenters are an offshoot, as you said, of Elijah Muhammad. Both of those pseudo-religious groups. They're political in nature, just like all religions. And he missed the mark when it came to Elijah Muhammad, because they were not just recruiting people from prison, they were reforming people in prison, and they were teaching in the neighborhoods, in their schools, and to guide young men, especially, away from those things that resulted in imprisonment. They were changing neighborhoods. They were changing communities. And I know for a fact there was an apartment complex in Washington, D.C. that was known for drug trafficking. And two Muslim families moved in, and they were affiliated with the Nation of Islam. And when they moved in, they went to the drug dealers and told them that you will not deal drugs in this complex unless you are looking to for your. I'm sorry, unless you are expecting your life to end soon. And there were no drug dealer in that complex. And the kids who came out of that complex did not glorify drug dealers. So all of these religions, their attributes, yes, but they don't change anything, because the Nation of Islam focused on people of African descent without any expressions of empathy towards anyone else. They saw people's skin color as opposed to dealing with the mindset. They did not see any possibility, even though they know about John Brown, yes, they did not see any possibility of redemption. They just saw him as an exception. And I'm saying to us today that we cannot write anyone off and say that they are beyond redemption. If we do that, then we are adding to the problem itself. And that problem is one that was created by Europeans. I'm saying that when it comes to any what word am I looking for? Anything that relates to race, that should be a non-starter for us. Why? Because we did not construct racism. However, we can deconstruct it. And the deconstruction of racism comes when you defeat that mindset. The manifestation of defeat for the mindset of racism will come when there is a defeat. There's already been a defeat of the liberal racism, racist rather. Now it's time to defeat the slave version of racism, the open racism in this nation, because the abolitionist racism saw us as being inferior to white people. The racism that we are talking about that's being reflected through Donald Trump is the racism that's instituted in this country. Systemic racism came from the Southern Jim Crow era. That's where systemic racism came from. The redlining that's in the house, that's in what's in Hood, that came from Jim Crow laws. And by the way, Jim Crow came from a white man in one of those minstrels that did entertainment around and painted their face black, and he called himself Jim Crow. That's where the word Jim Crow comes from. All those Jim Crow laws came into existence, codified rather, in the U.S. government. Everything that you see in the U.S. government as a policy that lends itself to the destruction, the manipulation, and control of people of African descent came from Jim Crow laws. And if the abolitionists in the North was as liberal or was as well-meaning as he say he was, then why is it that he did not rail against these Jim Crow laws before they were codified into federal law. That's what we are dealing with.
And why didn't they rail against it when the Southerners started taking over the Republican Party and started passing states' rights laws and doing everything they could to block voting in the northern states? So yeah, they didn't speak up then either.
Right. And even to this day, do you think for a moment, and I know I've said this before, but do you think for a moment that Joe Biden, Obama, Clinton, do you think for a moment that they did not know what's being exposed now? Do you think that Trump is a novelty, that what he's saying is new? All he's doing is pulling the cover off of everything that has existed since this country existed. You think they didn't know? You think that it is a coincidence that Africa, the continent of the people in Africa, the wealthiest continent on the face of the earth, the poorest people on the face of the earth, do you think that's coincidental? No. It is a system in place of Europeans, and now the Chinese has joined that system to keep Africa in poverty so that they can get cheap minerals. All of this is a part of Jim Crow. We look at it as they are separate entities, but they are not. They are interrelated. When Obama allowed Gaddafi to be killed, to be murdered, when he allowed that to happen, when they went in there to bomb Libya, it was after they took the nuclear weapons away from them so that they could do that, because Gaddafi was pulling Africa together, and the minerals were going to be the source of strength for the monetary denomination, the money that they were going to bring into existence. And it was going to be an African currency supported by the minerals in the ground. That's why Gaddafi was killed. So these things are not coincident. I did not intend to bring all that up in regards to those historical things, but I did intend for us to begin to think more deeply about this thing, this social construct called race. There is a difference between race and racism. Race does not exist. Racism does. Race does not exist because the Creator did not bring races into existence. The Creator brought African into existence. And out of that seed, out of that womb came every other group of people on the earth. So if you are racist based on whether you are African or not, then everybody is a racist because everybody's African. Now, Ron, go ahead.
I appreciate you bringing that up on. You say you didn't mean to. I think it needed to be discussed. It just goes in line too with listening this week. I must have heard several people on CNN and other news outlets who I think meant well, but everybody kept saying we have to protect our democracy. We can't let our democracy erode away, and that seemed to be a theme, and that seemed to be a fear. And two things. One, I like you to set, again, we're talking about the macro here, set things straight for what democracy looks like. And two, why is it that Europeans seem to be afraid of losing democracy? What is it that they're afraid of?
Europeans are not afraid of losing democracy. What Europeans are afraid of is that people are going to find out what democracy is supposed to look like. That's the fear. We live in an oligarchy where wealthy men control government, policy, etc. And that oligarchy was strengthened in this country when the Supreme Court says that corporations are people. that opened up the channels for wealthy men, white men in particular, to control everything that goes on in this country. The fear of people finding out what a democracy really is their greatest concern. And the reason people like Jamie Dimon was more supportive of Trump is because they were afraid that Biden was going to die in office, Kamala Harris is going to become president, and they did not know what direction the country was going to take in regards to bringing into existence a true democracy. What we are not hearing now is Reverend Barber is organizing white and Black poor people in this country. Everyone who has tried to do that has been murdered. King did not get killed until he started the Poor Person March. Fred Hampton was killed because he was organized. He was supposed to have a meeting with Black and white farmers, and they killed him before he could have that meeting. Barber is doing the same thing now. I do not believe that he will be killed. I do believe that what he is doing is tied inextricably to the status of Kamala Harris at this very moment. I do believe that those two things are working hand in hand. I believe that with everything in me. Why do I say all of that? Because there are so many moving pieces to this puzzle that people don't see them. The only thing they are seeing right now is Kamala Harris is running for president. But there are so many pieces globally that's attached to this and is slowly coming together in terms of manifestation. And I do believe that one of the major pieces that has to come into focus through manifestation is the whole idea that race doesn't exist, but racism does. And when you conclude that race doesn't exist, then you can start looking in the mirror and seeing the face of a Slavic person just like you see your own, meaning that you don't see someone as being mixed race or someone being of a race. You see people regardless of what they look like. When it comes to racism are policies that govern people. And that's what that is what's changed. Race, the policy that governs people, meaning that the policies that manipulate certain groups of people with exceptions of others. When you have a man alluding to the fact that he would offer immunity to a man who shot this woman in her face 3 times, he did not say he would, but he alluded to it. When you have that, what you have is the same mentality of enslavement. You can kill an enslaved person with impunity. The policeman came from that setting. And that is the reason it is necessary to bring into existence a policy that governs policemen and removing qualified immunity from policemen. That's going to happen, y'all. It's going to manifest. These are steps towards removing the policies of racism, which says that when you remove the policies of racism, you remove the authority to manipulate. You remove the authority to murder with impunity a group of people who don't look like you. All of these things are involved in these racist policies. The idea of steering of businesses, corporations steering clear of communities that have large populations who look like us because they want to keep the plantations in place. We are the ones who must put this reality of change, of democracy in play. And in doing so, what we are actually doing is making sure that the true essence of what a democracy is supposed to look like comes into place. So when you say that we must save our democracy, first of all, you don't have a democracy to save. So what you're actually saying is we want democracy. And with our input into the macro, we can make this a reality. We have the power to do that. But that does not happen until there is a transformation or a defeat of the attitude that's reflective in this person called Donald Trump. Keep in mind that Donald Trump is not the policies. Donald Trump is not the energy itself. Donald Trump is the face of that energy. Stephen Miller is more dangerous than Donald Trump could ever be, because Trump is dumb as nails and Stephen Miller is not. So we are not talking about, we're not talking about individual people. We are talking about the mindset that bring policies into existence, that has brought rather policies into existence that manipulates, controls, and murders people. That's what we are talking about. So when we talk about racism, we are not talking about somebody using the N-word towards you. No. If I call you the N-word, that doesn't change your life. Doesn't. It may make you angry, but it doesn't change the trajectory of your life. What changes the trajectory of your life are the policies that's instituted for the express purpose of doing that. Does that make sense? Questions, comments, please. I'm very much aware that I'm not the only one who has insight in this. I know some of you do as well, and I would like to hear it if you don't mind speaking to it.
Pastor, I have a comment. This is Evelyn. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay. When you're talking about what the African is going through and what the European concept is doing or has done, or is doing rather, I got so angry. I really started getting angry, and I realized that when I was feeling angry, that anyway, I was just feeling angry, and then I had to calm myself down because I'm tired of what's happening in the universe. And I remember what BJ said, Barbara, when she talked about.
Wait a minute. You're not tired. It's not being tired of what happened in the universe. It's tired of what's happening on this earth.
Okay, in this earth. Thank you for correction. But I remember when Barbara said that we're getting pus out of the sore. And the only way for a sore to heal is to get the pus out of it. But I want you to know now, I was getting upset because my son is in Asheville, North Carolina, and he experienced racism. I mean, he experienced racism to the T. I mean, he get it all the time, and it's hard on him. And thank you for telling us that we need to look at this thing with our eye instead of our eyes. Because again, I was really feeling upset, and I had to calm myself down. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
And I'm sure, Evelyn, that there are others who had to do the same thing. However, I think it's necessary for that to happen so that you can get it out of you. You can recognize where you are with it. And when you are able to do that, you see it differently. You have to see the difference between race and racism. That's all I'm saying. When as I said earlier, when I say a cable, I see energy. I see spirituality. When I say the children of the sun, I see the original human in the earth. When I look at the attitude of the original human in the earth and the areas around it prior to the 40,000 years ago when there was an interest into Europe. When I see that, I see what democracy looks like. Democracy was not a Greek thing. Greece did not have a democratic government based upon democracy. Democracy is a governmental what is it? It's a governmental principle that had its genesis in the kingdoms of Achaebalon. And all of them were based upon spirituality and the need to make sure that all of humanity was taken care of. And today we call that naivete. You're naive enough to believe that. That is a mindset of Europe, not a mindset of Achaebalon. And please understand something. The mindset of Europe will not exist without it being allowed to exist by the universe. Hear me well. If you don't know what imbalance is, you don't know what balance looks like. If you are not able to create spiritually in your likeness, your image and likeness, you're not God. You are not Elohim. You're not Amun-Ra. You're not. And created in image and likeness has nothing to do with race, but it does have everything to do with the eradication of racism. Are you able to see that? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Nick. What'd you say?
Yes, sir. No, I was just gonna say the I feel like the throughout any social movement, any sort of push for change across history, it has likely been the energy of the Black woman that has been the origin of that thing, as we've spoken about it here. So I just wanted to point out that that is also part of sort of the focus of energy around Kamala Harris, because she is many things that the mindset of the European does not like, wrapped into one, and is therefore very much a focus for that energy of resistance to that confused, selfish, etc. mindset. And that's why I believe we see things like, largest Zoom call ever of white women and then also white men for Kamala Harris. It is the sort of playing out on the physical stage of, as we said, the mindset that Trump represents and the emerging mindset of the new age of humanity that we are entering, represented by Kamala Harris. And even all that is not a guarantee that she will win, but it is a guarantee that this is the direction we're headed in, and it is up to us to make sure that we make haste in that direction, spiritually speaking. Thank you.
Thank you. And the other part of that is this. When we look at what's happening now, what we also see in every aspect of what is happening in regards to Kamala Harris are things that's never happened before. The talking heads say that she raised $310 million in a month in July. No, she didn't. No, she didn't. She raised $310 million in 10 days. from the 21st of July to the 31st of July in 10 days. So the God of this world is being drawn to her. And the transformation of this lies in what we are able to do in the macro in terms of understanding the principles that are involved in this. And the major principle that's involved in this is the principle of racism. And I would love for you to correct yourself if you are upset by the racist tropes that's going to be thrown at her. Hold your peace and calm yourself. Why? Because when you are angry, you cannot process properly. There's one thing I learned early. Controlled anger, controlled fear is what makes heroes. A person who is angry and cannot control it is already defeated. But a person who has controlled anger is usually victorious. So I'm saying control your anger, because your anger is directed towards a man, and the man is not the problem. If that were the case, then when all the slave owners died, all this would have been gone. No. Don't be angry with the man. Don't even be angry with what the man says, because the man doesn't know any better. You do. The reason that a person is a racist is not because he a hillbilly coming out of the mountain with no teeth and living in a rusty trailer. That's not making him a racist because he got a Confederate flag and call you a name. That doesn't make him a racist. That makes him a supporter of racism. A racist is one who is able to implement and enforce the policies that oppress people based upon the color of their skin. And that person who come out of the backwoods has no authority to do anything except support racism. That's it. He cannot be a racist because he doesn't have power. The racist is the one who has the power. Does that make sense, guys?
Yep.
Yes, it does.
That's the racist.
That does make sense to me, but doesn't that guy also feel like he has the power to be racist?
Of course he does. What makes him feel like he has the power, though? The color of his skin.
Right, and the system, yeah.
Yeah, because it's not the content of the character, neither is it his intellectual ability to process.
And also the fear. The fear empowers.
And the reason, why is he afraid? Because those in power tells him to be afraid.
No, he's not afraid. The people he's terrorizing, that's what empowers him.
But see, this is the thing. The only reason he does it is because he is afraid. He's afraid that this group of people is going to rise above him. And he's been told that by the powers of racism. Does that make sense? Think about it. The only reason that the Night Riders came into existence in 1877 at the end of Reconstruction, the only reason that they came into existence was because they were afraid that the government was going to be ruled by people who had been enslaved, and they were going to do the same thing to them. So what did they do? They took that fear and they used that fear to stop people from voting. So I would tell anybody this. There is no way in the world that I believe that you will find anyone who supports racism or anyone who is racist. I do not believe that you will find any of them who's not afraid. All of them are afraid. And they're afraid of us. And they know that we're not here to kill them. But they are going to push that thing that Black people are barbarians and they are going to kill us if they get in power. That's projection. That's not reality. And they know it. But as long as they can keep that hillbilly thinking that he got power because of the color of his skin, then that hillbilly is going to get 25 of his boys to go after one man. But he's never going to be that one man to come after one person. That's not going to happen. If they were not afraid, they would stand up in group. Now, the other part of it is, they wouldn't have to do that, rather. The other part of this is this. Black people are afraid of white folks. Why? Asians are afraid of white folks. They want to be white. They want to have that white mindset because they're afraid of white people. Everybody on this earth is afraid of white. Why? Go ahead.
No, I
Go ahead,
was
Ron.
just saying that's what I meant. The African is afraid of white people, and that the fear of the fear that the African puts out there is the energy that feeds all this. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, I can see that. White people are scared of white people. When NATO wanted to put a base in the area where Kosovo and Bosnia is, what did they do? Bill Clinton, for 7-8 days, they bombed Bosnia in order to move the borders of Kosovo. They bombed them. It was not UN sanctioned. It was a NATO action. They just made a decision that that's what they're going to do. And one of the largest NATO bases on Earth is in that area today. And that's how they got it in that area. Who did Bush consult when he bombed Iraq? Nobody. Nobody. Right now, let me ask you another question. Why is it that the greatest heroes in America are the SEAL team? Do you think for a moment that the SEALs just sitting around right now since there's no war going on? Do you think that they just in training constantly and have no operations going on? If you think that, then you don't know the mindset of this nation. Conflict is always going on in this earth because America is the chief provocateur for conflict. And the British come close behind them with the French and the Germans. But America is the tip of the spear when it comes to global conflict. And there are several things that we could actually endeavor to talk about in regards to that, but that's not the focus of our discussion today, is racism and race. Does that make sense, guys? Come on.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
So I'm saying to you today, and I'm about finished, what I'm saying to you today is this. See yourself as a Kabbalah, not Africa. Africa is a made-up name that came from the Greeks. A Kabbalah is the reality. Why is Akabalon the reality? Because Akabalon speaks to life. It speaks to creative life for the benefit of humanity. Akabalon speaks to the unicity that humans are supposed to have with the universe. Akabalon does not segregate people. Akabalon is not a thought, is not an energy that draws line based on skin tones or geographical location. Akabalon is the center of spirituality on this globe. It is the epicenter of loving kindness, the epicenter of mercy, the epicenter of apathy and sympathy, the epicenter of forgiveness. When we talk about Africa, we see a group of people. When we talk about the Akabalon, we experience a powerful energy, an energy that is not new to the earth. It's simply new to us because it's been so long since the earth has experienced it. And look at what's happening. Do not be afraid of their faces. Meaning, do not be afraid of the countenance that your eyes see. Do not be afraid of the chaos that's taking place. Do not feel like all is lost because these things keep happening repeatedly. There are things that must happen in order for manifestation to be seen. Yes, it was brutal for the young lady to be shot in her face 3 times. But look at the results of it. I don't believe that our anger or our passion to see things change would be where it is if it were not for things like that. When we were Christians, praying for everything to be all right, these things upset us, but on Sunday morning we were told, give it to God, put it in the hands of Jesus, and it will be taken care of. And nothing changed. But the moment that we saw Christianity for what it is, and we began to look at spirituality through the eye of Akabalon, and we did not even realize what we were doing when we started. But when we made that declaration, humanity will not end on our watch. When we made the declaration that we want everything to be exposed, and when that exposure came in full force through Donald Trump, that's when we were able to see the manifestation of change. Change does not always look pretty. It doesn't always feel good. But this is not about looks and feelings. This is about spiritual reality. If a nation is to be built, a country must be destroyed. And the deconstruction of a country is hard to bear when you see the resistance to that deconstruction. Yet, it is necessary that it be done. Right now, I will say to you, if it takes my life being taken in order for this deconstruction to continue, so be it. I have no qualms with that. No qualms with that. The people like Medgar Evers that we look back at, the people like, as George brought up, John Brown, the people Harriet Tubman, when we look at these people, Queen Zinga, when we look at these people who sacrificed so much because of what they believed in, they are the building blocks for the change that's being manifested right now. If you think this is chaotic, if you think this is dangerous, make every effort to place yourself in the shoes of Harriet Tubman. Continuously return into a place where there is a bounty on your head to free other people who look like you, while at the same time having no hate for anybody. If you think this is dangerous, put yourself in her shoes. If you think this is dangerous, look at the generations that came before you and what they had to endure so that they could be building blocks toward the deconstruction of this country so we can build a true nation. Right now, the ancestors are guiding us and showing us the things that needs to be projected, that needs to be talked about, discussed, so that people could grasp them and be made stronger and wiser as a result of understanding these principles, such as the difference between race and racism. Thank you. If there are no questions or comments, I'm done.
I have a question, Pastor Jay.
Yes.
So is a cable on the soul of man?
Yes, I would say that. I say it's the source of the soul of man because it's spiritual. It's not a landmass. Get that in your head, okay? We're not talking about a landmass. We're talking about spirituality.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Yes.
Right, the concept,
In that
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're quite welcome.
Anyone else? Questions, comments?
I just have a comment question. This is Audrey. So you're saying that we shouldn't react to the racism that we're seeing. We should rather respond
Yes.
and respond based on what we know now in terms of the principles of Mayat, as well as understanding that even whatever these people are doing, saying they too are still part of the Creator. And if we live by the principles, then we can imbue ourselves with a response as rather than a reaction.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Because see, the race, this whole question about race and the delineation of race, what was it? I think it was in the early 40s when anthropologists began listing races, with the top of the most superior race being the Caucasian. What do they call it? Come on, help me, Nick. The Caucasian thing, Caucasian, the Negroid,
Oh, yeah, I don't remember. White
Oh,
people.
okay. See, hey, Audrey, y'all
Caucasoid,
Caucasoid.
Negroid, Mongoloid.
Yes, that's in the early 40s, but you waste your money sending Nick to school. But anyway.
He hadn't paid me back either.
I'll take you back spiritually.
But that did not come into existence until the 40s. And the what is that? What, not the Caucasoid, but the prehistoric people, name some of those.
Neanderthal.
Neanderthal. Neanderthal was we were called Neanderthal. And recently, when they found out that Europeans only one had the Neanderthal gene, we didn't. Now the Neanderthal is the smartest thing out there.
Are they trying to make him so?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and that's recent. So, but anyway, that in itself is an example of how racism works and how stupid it is. But anyway, I'm done unless there are questions or comments. Seriously.
I wanted to add something, Mom, where you said in reference to what Pastor Richard said about when you control your anger, when you respond rather than react. Every input that we receive is an opportunity to essentially transmute what is chaotic into something that is ordered, for lack of a better term, and bring it higher in terms of energy and vibration. And that is what you do when you control your anger, when you control your fear. You take the energy of what that is and you create the space and opportunity within yourself to increase the frequency of vibration of that energy. And effectively, you make that work for you. And essentially, transmute what that could have been in a negative response or reaction from you into a higher response from you that begins to vibrate differently within you, and that has the effect of sort of advancing your own spiritual practice, maybe for lack of a better term. But it is every opportunity that we see as like something negative being presented is an opportunity to learn how to take that within us and transmute or bring that energy to a higher place within ourselves. And in so doing, progress spiritually. And that is sort of the key fundamental ability that we have to evolve spiritually. It is quite literally the ability to transmute what is lower into something higher, or to bring it higher. That is what we're doing individually. That is what we're doing collectively. That is the whole process and purpose of being here in the physical experience. It is said that as above, so below, as below, so above. That is the sort of recognition that the difference between above and below is complete illusion. It is complete the result of our own sort of ignorance, selfishness, etc. And then when we do the work of taking what is lower, quote unquote, and bringing it higher, we unite those two things, what is above and what is below. And it is always the goal of the mindset of the European, which on this planet is the mindset of, well, the European is on this planet the representative for a sort of cosmic universal principle, one that is sort of selfish, myopic, confused, lost, etc. It is the sort of universal responsibility of all conscious beings to engage what that is, and in themselves and collectively wherever we see it, and to learn how to bring it to a higher place, because that is the redemption of all things. That is the recreation of the unity that existed before certain sort of spiritual insanity took us over as a result of our own doing, inevitably, and possibly secretly, intentionally. Because in order to grow, you must face challenge. In order to have that challenge be useful, it cannot allow it to destroy you. And destroying in the spiritual sense is becoming like that thing, becoming like the chaos you encounter. Growing as a result of encountering it is learning to bring that low vibration higher within yourself. So that's what I just wanted to describe. Is sort of what is happening spiritually, metaphysically, when we encounter something that we could react to, but instead choose to respond to. And it is very difficult.
when you
for
use-
us. Go ahead.
Sorry, Nick, go ahead.
I was pretty much finished. It's very difficult to do that, but once you know you have the ability to do that, it becomes something you can teach yourself how to do.
So when you use the word transmute, is that similar to transform?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
In other words, an energy, taking that energy, because energy is the same basically. All energy is the same, but it's the intent and the desire that gives us its vibration and its resonance. So you're saying the same thing as transform as well, because you can take that energy that's meant for deviousness and unripeness and form it into righteousness by virtue of your response to it rather than your reaction to it. Same thing?
Yes, ma'am. By virtue of what you choose to do with it when it is given to you.
Okay.
It's like maybe if you see energy as electricity, instead of using it in an electric chair, you use it for the benefit of people being able to see at night. Use it for lights. But it's the same energy. It's just how you use it. Same energy. And that energy is very, very powerful when it's not chaotic. Because when it's chaotic, it's pulling in all directions. But when it's not chaotic, it's focused. And that's what we're talking about. Focused sense of energy. When you focus it on response as opposed to a reaction. Reaction is out of control. Response is controlled.
Good stuff. Anyone else? Okay. Okay, it's a good place to stop and ponder and see if we have any questions for tomorrow. Again, write them down or send them to me or Pastor or someone. We will resume tomorrow. I think Audra has a question on the floor. We'll address tomorrow. Get us going, okay? Have a great day, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. You have a great day.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
everyone.
Thank y'all.
Take care, family.